Hi guys, and in this little video I was going to make this an addition to my beginning airbrushing video, but I decided to do this as a separate little video, just as a bit of an item of interest and myth-busty kind of thing, because something I've seen said on forums and model groups a lot is, oh, the Neo for Iwata, it's not even made by Iwata, it's just a cheap Chinese airbrush with Iwata's name on it with a bit of quality control, etc. And I've seen comments of this nature thrown around a lot. Well, just recently I happened to get this Neo for Iwata, and I've had a bit of a curiosity about these things because I very nearly bought one of these a good while ago when they were first announced. I wanted to show you the two of these to just show you that that statement is very clearly untrue. This is a cheap Chinese airbrush. This is the Neo for Iwata. Now, I don't know how well it's going to come across on video, but first and foremost, immediately you can see that the finish on the Neo is far, far better than the finish on this. The finish on this Neo is really, really nice. It's smooth, it's good, hard, smooth chrome, it's really shiny. The finish on this is nice, it's decent enough, but it scuffs more easily. It's got a couple of areas that are worn with just general use and laying it on the table. And I do tend to take care of my stuff, so it's in pretty good condition compared to most 12-year-old Chinese airbrushes that have been used regularly. But that said, you can see the difference. Just the quality of the finish and everything is far, far better on the Neo. And with both you get a little wrench, just a stamped steel wrench, same with both, with a little strengthening rib in the middle. This one's got the Neo logo just under the wrench portion. And these are for removal of the nozzle. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and strip the two and show you them stripped down and the differences between them. So first of all, we're going to strip the Chinese brush. And the procedure for both of these, as with the Iwata Revolution CR that you've seen in my other video, the procedure's exactly the same. The procedure's the same for the Harder and Steenbeck, etc. The only real difference with that one and the Badger being that those nozzles are push fit, whereas this one requires a spanner or wrench to take the nozzle off. So I'm going to draw out the needle. I'm going to pop the wrench to one side, and I'm going to pop out the trigger, unscrew the needle guide, pull this out and shake out the little S-shaped piece that the trigger rolls back on. Now that's the very first thing you'll notice, that this is separate. This is common on most cheap Chinese airbrushes. This is as much as I'm stripping it down. I'm not going to go and take the air valve apart because the air valves are much of a muchness in the way that they work anyway. And now I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same on the Neo. First thing you notice is you've got a seal between the rear cap and the body, a rubber seal there. And we're going to go ahead and take these apart. The second thing worthy of note is that this air cap screws onto the Neo body there. No seal there. On the cheap Chinese one there's a seal there, which suggests that there's a possibility of air leakage from there. I've never tried it without the seal, so I don't know for certain, but using the wrench, loosen that off, undo it by hand and take out the nozzle, and then slacken and remove the needle. Draw out the plunger trigger and unscrew the needle guide here. Oops, the chucking nut's just unscrewed there. Let's just pop that back on a second so it doesn't all ping out and I lose the spring. And we'll draw this out to the back of the body. and you'll notice there the little S-shaped piece of metal is actually peened onto that shaft. It's fastened in place so that it cannot fall off, get lost, and more importantly, it means it's far easier to assemble. This is the fiddliest part of the reassembly. When you're stripping it down for a clean, you must try not to lose to pull the trigger out or lose it, because if this drops out, it's a real fiddle to get back in. It's a pain in the backside. Now, if you undo the chucking nut, that allows you to pull this off and to slide the spring off. But these are much the same, same design anyway. They're all much the same in design, with very slight little differences, such as on this one here, you've got a grooved guide which goes into a brass ring with a screw that protrudes through it. That grooved guide goes onto there and makes sure that that doesn't rotate, so it locks it in place. With the Harder and Steenbeck, you have a similar kind of setup, but it's got a hex head on this sliding unit here instead. So they achieve the same purpose but slightly different. But the little S-shaped piece as well, you can also see there, the one, hopefully that's nice and visible, but the one with the cheap Chinese brush is very cheap, thin stamped steel, and the one on the Neo is much thicker, much sturdier. You can see that. The needle for this one is going to be very hard to see on here, but while they look essentially the same, the one for the Neo has a much nicer finish on the point. It has a higher polish on the taper and on the tip, and it also has a more positive noticeable taper at the very end. So there's a definite quality difference there. And this is just bigger, thicker and chunkier all over. I mean, this is the nozzle cap, and you can see if I compare the two side by side, there's a huge difference there. So while I'm not trying to rubbish one or say that another one is far superior, because they do both work as well as one another, it's just a little bit of a curiosity thing for me and a Mythbuster thing, in that the Neo for Iwata is often said to be a cheap Chinese airbrush, and the only difference between them is that the Neo has quality control. It's very evident that that's not the case. I mean, if you look inside the paint bowls, you'll see there the finish inside this one is actually better than some of the Chinese ones I've seen. Some are actually quite rough inside, but I've never seen a Chinese one with a bowl design like this, which makes it far easier to clean and means that you waste less paint, for example. So no, it's not a cheap Chinese airbrush at all. If it is made by Grex, as said, then Grex are a very good manufacturer of airbrushes. And another difference here is the trigger. Far thicker and sturdier. This uses a ball which presses onto the valve and rotates, whereas this uses a pin which is on a swivel there, and that presses onto the valve. So it does the same job. It's not that that's particularly bad in design. There's nothing wrong with it, but you can see that there are very obvious differences. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and put these back together now. As we're going through the reassembly here, I'm just going to show you this bit, which is the awkward bit. What you have to do is kind of push this back with your finger here, drop this in sideways because it has to go in sideways, and then sort of twist it so that it sits right. While you're holding this, you need to take your plunger trigger, drop that into the hole, which is hard to do when I'm not looking at it because I'm trying to keep it on the camera for you. Come on. Come on. Come on. Just trying to get that to line up. There we go. No. Nope. So you really have to kind of eyeball this as you're dropping it in to make sure you line it up, because that brass pin needs to drop right into the hole that's made for it to drop on top of the air valve. And that's not going to go in without me looking at it, obviously, but that's essentially what you have to do to make sure that it sits right. So if you just excuse me one moment while I nip off camera and just eyeball this so I can see what's going on. Okay, so there we go. So as I say, it is a little bit tricky. You have to get that brass pin to drop into the hole, but once that's in, it will actually hold this in place, and then you can see that it works right. The S shape is that way, incidentally, like an S if you're looking from the left-hand side, and then that will work fine. It won't move once that's in place, but it's really, really fiddly to get in. There it is, Neo for Iwata, cheap Chinese airbrush, myth busted, I guess. Not half as exciting as the stuff that the Mythbusters actually did, but something that I've been curious about, and hopefully something that might be a bit informative for you guys. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video, and the next video hopefully will have an update on the... I've been that busy playing with all this kind of stuff and trying to get this video done. I've barely done anything on the cappuccino, so hopefully we'll have an update on the cappuccino very soon. But the next video might be a little introduction to the 3D printer that I have just had delivered and I'm itching to put together and play with, which is a Creality Ender 3. I won't be doing an in-depth anything on that because there are reams and reams and reams of really good videos on that, and I'm a complete newbie to 3D printing, so I'm literally just going to do a quick introduction to it, get the thing put together, and then maybe a time lapse of a first print or something. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.